Your dad had many good ideas that it was like a fountain, but I really thought 606 Studio was one of his top ideas. I came in 1990 and didn't teach that first year in the studio, but joined later, I think perhaps the next year. The combination of 4 faculty members and a student team system was obviously very successful, because you can point to so many plans that not only were completed as a student project, but were implemented.
So each class had 4 faculty.
Right, 4 faculty. And then the year I first came, there was only one project, and the whole studio was on that project.
Like, how many people would be in the studio?
It really varied. The ideal was 16. Okay. So you'd have 4 teams of 4, but it went up to 20 some, and down to one year we had 7 students in the time that I taught. But I started as one of the faculty members, and then became one of the co-leaders when I was working as the graduate coordinator. So in joining the studio, the process was in the fall quarter, students would be looking for fundable projects that met a number of criteria. We didn't do like a studio project on someone's residence unless there were significant learning opportunities and design opportunities. But that was generally a scale that was too limited. Mm-hmm. Instead, we looked at those that could be looked at a regional scale, sort of a meta scale, and then a small scale. Mm-hmm. And students would knock on doors and make connections and secure these projects after writing a proposal. And then if there was an agreement that they would be funded, then they would select the projects and form teams around them. And then for the next 2 quarters, we would prepare these plans using your dad's process, which was drawn from Alfred North Whitehead's theories of education.
Will you tell us about that?
Well, of course, the book Design for Human Ecosystems does a really good job at describing that. But
Come back to that.
He developed this 3-part application of Whitehead's theory of education. And so we had stages, and Whitehead called the first one the stage of romance. And that's this free-for-all, go out and collect impressions and talk to people and immerse in the landscape. And at the end of the 3 to 4 week period, produce some kind of an expression that sums up your feelings about the site and your attachment to it.
So everything that they could find about that site, just consuming everything without any ideas. Like, would they already know what they were doing at that point? Was it just...
Well, they would have a general, the client says, we want a development plan for 5,200 units, mixed use development in former East Berlin. That was one of the projects. Mm-hmm. Or there was one done before my time on, I think, the island of Mallorca. And there was one that was done prior to the Olympics in Japan. There were a lot in Los Angeles for almost every watershed. And the students would go to their site, even if it were an international project, and immerse in the site, talk to as many people as they could, and just not really judge their reactions to it. They would just collect them, knowing that eventually they would be winnowing these down into a landscape plan for the project. So they had a general goal from their client, and then...
And the romance was sort of the open exploration of all the information, and sort of absorbing everything of that place and of the people.
Yeah, it was fuel. It was fueling the project so that they loved it, and that their creative juices were flowing, and that they couldn't wait to jump in and come up with resolutions to some of the complex issues that were at play.
So what happened after the romance stage?
The romance, they entered the stage of precision, which in Lyle's diagram showed these many streams then becoming funneled as they address the specific issues. And those would be, of course, water, air, might be cultural systems, geomorphology. They addressed all of the major systems.
And was it all with sort of like an ecological mindset? Or was
in that all things are related.
Yeah.
So, and Design for Human Ecosystems puts the human into and it shines a light on how critical the role of cultural processes are in understanding the functioning of the landscape. So they would describe the structure of it, usually in block diagrams. These were 3D diagrams that we see all the time now. But then they were rare. Usually you just saw plan views from the Cargill suitability mapping. But by putting them into 3D, you could see the interrelationships, say, between groundwater and surface water, or between geomorphic processes of faulting and shifting, in how it affects the surface landform. Those block models were critical for really expressing the function of the landscape. They were like the inventory of their site, but then they would analyze the opportunities and constraints in accordance with the goals that they had developed in the stage of romance. So they would make a presentation to their clients at that point and make sure they were right on track. And do some refinements, and then, ta-da, enter the third stage, which becomes creative again, where you're bringing the creative juices of the first stage in alignment with the precision from the second. So what a process that John and his original co-leaders, he worked, I think, definitely with Jeff Olson as the project leaders, and then Art Jokla, and I think it was Mark Malmaki came in as the original team.
Oh wow! It just sounds like such a different way of learning and teaching both,
and highly effective. The Germany project wasn't the only one that won a national professional award. I think we had at least 7 on the professional side, and then numerous others that won the student awards. To the point where Kyle Brown and I put together a retrospective and a prospective study of these. It was for the Council of Educators in Landscape Architecture, where we looked at the cumulative impact of 25 years of using this process on planning within Los Angeles specifically. And we called it patterns of perseverance, because there's so much turnover in planning firms that they don't have that kind of longevity and ability to look at cumulative effects of planning methods. And this was, in essence, 606 Studio was like a planning firm that had a very consistent philosophy and approach. So we felt that was something that you could evaluate as a body of work. And we looked at the plans from 76 to 2001 at the time.
Oh, wow.
And evaluated them against criteria that were being used for assessing planning at the time. We developed some criteria like, was the plan implemented? Do students, are they working in similar kinds of jobs within the region?
I would love to see that.
Yeah. If the plans weren't implemented themselves, was the process continued on with the client's own planning process? And that happened often.
Like it got taken over by sort of the inside.
Yeah. And that was so interesting because in one case, we did a plan for the San Diego River. I think that was the one. We also did one. Yeah, we did one for the upper watershed, but we also did one in the lower watershed, where they wanted to see how the process would work, and then they took it and implemented pilot projects throughout. So they did the implementation later on, but they had the process set up. Right. So we developed, I think, 4 or 5 different criteria for our take on whether it was successful or not, and concluded, of course, that really the 606 studio has been a planning force, especially within Los Angeles.
Oh, I would love to see that. That sounds, because it's so easy for all this work to sort of disappear out to the world. But so much hard work that has really, it gets awards, it's happening. It's nice to have a record of it existing and being important, and especially, these students that we're working with their clients.
Right. And I think when you're a master's student going through a program, working day and night on these projects, you can't really see where it fits into a larger piece.
Right.
And that's where, that's what we're trying to communicate to them, that they were part of really something quite unique. No other program that I'm aware of has looked at at that point, 2001, I haven't looked recently, has looked at their cumulative effect as in a similar way.
Yeah.
And I think it really helped ground them and build the confidence that they needed to say, this is significant work, and I'd like to find a job where I can continue this kind of work.
Yeah.
And so when Island Press decided to reprint Design for Human Ecosystems, I had opportunity to write a foreword. And I found that that original article, Can Floating Seeds Create Deep Form, was this wonderful metaphor for your dad's work, because he floated so many seeds in his career. And the idea is that like, picture a dandelion and the seeds floating, and most don't ever go anywhere, but some find the perfect niche and then blossom and grow and bear fruit and continue on. And he had so many of those that affected so many people. This book clearly changed my life, made me go to Los Angeles, and the Center for Regenerative Studies attracted so many people, teachers and students alike, and continues to do so, that so much of his work bore fruit and found those niches. That I love the parallel between that early article, because so many of us are creating and created deep form as a result.
Yeah.